Hello everybody and welcome to my video on the Nikon D3000. Well, my first of 3 videos actually on this camera. This first video is going to cover the camera's basic layout, what everything that's on it is. In the second video we'll talk about how to do everything you need to do to take a photo, and then in the third video we're going to go over the complete menu system, explaining what every item in the menu is, as well as how to use those things in the menu to affect your photos. So without further ado, the Nikon D3000 is an interchangeable lens compact DSLR. Now what that means is that the lens can be removed, taken off, and put back onto the camera at any point when you're not taking a photo. I mean, theoretically you could do it while you're taking a photo, you just ruin your image. It's digital, and it is an SLR, meaning the light from the lens bounces off this mirror that's right in there up to an eyepiece in the back of the camera, and then you get a little bit of a blackout when you're taking a photo because the mirror is up and the light's going to the sensor. It has an APS-C, what Nikon calls DX format, 10.2 megapixel CCD sensor. That's right, this is an old enough camera that it includes a charge-coupled device. It has a multi-mode meter with matrix, center-weighted, and spot options, shutter speeds of 30 seconds to 1/4000th, and bulb with a 3 frame per second burst rate. The viewfinder, which is right back here, has a magnification of 0.8x and a frame coverage of 95%. So what does the frame coverage mean? Let's assume that what you're seeing right now is what's going to be on your digital file. With a 95% frame coverage, about 2.5% of the image on each side, in the top and the bottom, will be on the digital file, but not in your viewfinder. The ISO range is 100 to 1600. The flash sync speed is 1/200th. And just as a note, given that this is an old camera, it was released in 2009, produced until 2010. So as of this video's recording, it's a 13-year-old camera. Ideally, you want to keep the ISO setting from 100 to 200. Pushing this camera beyond 400 will introduce a lot of unwanted noise and can affect your image quality. The target market for the Nikon D1000 was the entry-level shooter, and we know that because this camera initiated the 4-digit numbering code for the entry-level Nikon cameras. It's a very light camera, owing to it having a less robust build quality than the higher-end cameras. It's also very small, being a compact camera, and it has very few external buttons that allow you to directly control different functions from external buttons. And that's a hallmark, by the way, of entry-level cameras, is that more things are menu-controlled, fewer things are button-controlled, and that's a way that entry-level cameras' costs are minimized. It was made by Nikon in Thailand from 2009 to 10. It was preceded by the D60, concurrent with multiple other Nikon cameras, including the 5000, D90, the 700, and the entire D3 family, and it was followed by the D3100. Now, if you have your Nikon D3000, we're going to do as we do and go over what all of the different things on the camera are, and then in the second video talk about how to use them. So right here on the top, these are your strap bars, and this is what you would connect your camera strap to. This is your pop-up flash, which we can see if we pop it up. There we go. Pop-up flash. Flash hot shoe. This is the index for your mode dial, and this is the mode dial itself. The index just tells you what you're set to. Info button, exposure value compensation button, power switch right here, shutter release button. On the front of the camera, we have the remote control infrared port, autofocus assist light, lens mount, lens release button right here, maker and model. On the camera's back, we have a handful of things here. We've got the viewfinder. Here, this little switch next to the viewfinder is the diopter adjuster. So if you have a minor eyeglasses prescription, you can use the diopter adjuster to make it so you don't have to wear glasses when you look through the viewfinder. playback, menu, zoom out and zoom in buttons, LCD screen, 4-way control pad, OK button, delete button, SD card in use lamp, autofocus auto exposure lock button, command wheel. On the camera's bottom, we have the battery chamber here, and we'll see how to use that in the second video. This is the certification sticker with the serial number and the tripod socket. On this side of the camera, we have the SD card port, like that, and we'll talk more about the SD cards you can and cannot use in this camera in the second video. And then on this side of the camera, we have the HDMI port and the USB port. That's an old, I couldn't find out if it was a Type 1 or a Type 2, but it's an old mini USB port from 2009. It's not going to have great data rates by today's standards. And then the, I'm sorry, that's not an HDMI port, that's a video out port. I misspoke. That is only for displaying video to TV screens. If there is a way to turn this into a webcam, I don't know of it. So I have a few tips for you to help you get the most out of your Nikon D3000. The first is that to get the most out of your photos, you want to shoot RAW and edit those RAW files on your computer. The RAW files from the D3000 still have a pretty good amount of editing leeway if you keep the ISO to about 100 to 200 in 2022, and that's a really good way to get the most out of this camera. Also, just because this is an entry-level camera doesn't mean it's bad. It can still take really great photos. The CCD sensors in these old cameras are nice and do tend to perform well and hold up over time. And the last tip, as I mentioned, that USB connector is an old mini connector, so rather than transferring your files to your computer with a USB cable, just use the SD card port, or the SD card itself, pop it out, put it into an SD card reader in your computer, and then transfer the files. That way you'll get much, much faster data transfer versus the USB cable. Some things not to do with your camera. Don't let it get wet because it is not weather sealed and water getting inside of it will absolutely brick your camera. Try to avoid touching the mirror and the shutter if you can, and the sensor, because those are good ways to kind of muck those up and make your camera perform poorly. Don't leave your camera or lenses in your car because heat and cold can damage them significantly and cause them to malfunction or break or otherwise be ruined. Also, leaving a camera in a car is a good way to have your car broken into. Don't store this camera in a plastic bag or box because water will permeate that plastic and it can cause fungus to grow on the optics, the mirror, the viewfinder, mildew to grow in the rubber here of your camera's grip, and it can ruin your cameras pretty quickly. If you do want to keep it in a plastic bag or box, make sure you have a rechargeable desiccant pack that you keep recharged. So that's it for the first video. In the second video, we're going to go through what everything is on the camera. We're going to talk about what everything does, rather, on the camera and how to use it. And then in the third video, we'll go through the menu systems in depth so that you can learn how to customize this camera to do exactly what you want it to do for your shooting experience. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If this video was helpful and useful to you, please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know that I'm on the right track and that I'm producing and creating content which is helpful to you. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please leave those in the comments section below. I'm pretty good about responding every couple of days and answering whatever questions you have to the best of my ability. If you'd like to subscribe to find out when I have more videos about how to use cameras, photographic techniques, or the best practices for the tools of the trade, by all means, please subscribe and check that notifications bell to be alerted when new content arrives. If you'd like to support the channel by joining with a membership, there are now membership options for this channel at different tiers that will give you different benefits if you would be interested in that. And one last thing, thank you everyone very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next videos. Won't we, Steinbeck? What's that look about?